So now I've got the position of the camera set up. And this is where you can see why a tool like the camera sequencer would be useful, because if I am told that, yeah, frame 1, oh yeah, over here, we're starting at frame 0. Let's change that. That should be starting at frame 1. Frame 1 to 57 is camera 1. And then if I wanted to pick up the action, I'd have to go panels, perspective, and then go to shot 2, and then animate from here. But the thing that's very frustrating is there's no easy way with this timeline to switch between cameras. I have to always go manually and switch from one camera to the next. And that's why the camera sequencer was created, to give people a tool that allows them to do that. So I'm going to demonstrate how to set up the camera sequencer. Head up to Windows, Animation Editors, and this is where you can find the camera sequencer. So I'm going to open this thing up. And the camera sequencer, you'll see that it has a timeline, right? Just like this one here, okay? Right now, if I scrub this timeline, nothing happens because there's no shots. It doesn't have any effect on the scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the beginning here, and you go to Create Shot. The first thing you do in the camera sequencer is go Create Shot, but go to the Options. All right. Now, the name, Shot 1, that works. The camera, I don't want to use the perspective camera. Shot 1, yes, let's be logical. Let's try it. So we start at frame 1, we end at frame 57. And here's the thing with the camera sequencer, the options, right? New shot placement, current frame. So what would happen is it would take frames 1 to 57 and play them at frame 7. So the camera sequencer is non-linear, which means you can mix up the scene, you can have the end of the scene first. So we have to be really careful when you make that first shot. And it has this option here, instead of just current frame, you can choose manual. So I prefer this just to make sure that these match, that I know that frame 1 of the shot matches frame 1 of the timeline. So all these numbers match exactly what I want. It won't depend on what frame I'm on. So even if I'm all the way at the end, it will create this shot at frame 1, and it will contain the animation from frames 1 to 57. Then I'm going to say Create Shot. Okay, now you can see we've got this shot here in our camera sequencer. And right now it works when I scrub, right? And when I get to the end, nothing happens because there isn't another shot, but I've made that shot. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make shot 2. So I'll do the same thing. We'll Create Shot. Go here. This time I'm going to name it shot 2. I'm going to go with the camera named shot 2. And now I got to change the number. So I know it has to start at 58. And I want that to go, again, we don't exactly know the end frame. We can always adjust it later. So what we'll do is we'll just type in, let's say 150, right? Let's just say we'll get to like 150, give ourselves like 100 frames here, at least. End frame 150. Now again, the options. I should get this to match this. But if I have clicked on this shot, if it's highlighted, see it's not highlighted, but if I click on it and it's highlighted, I can also choose the option after current shot. And then it will automatically put that shot at the end of this one. If you don't want to trust these options, which is not a bad thing, if you're not going to trust it, then you can always go with manual and make sure that the numbers match, okay? And then I'll hit Create Shot. And now what I have are 2 shots. And the difference with the camera sequencer and the timeline, I'll demonstrate. If I scrub with the timeline down here, it always stays in shot 1. It will always stay in that camera. If I use the timeline here and I go across the cut, it switches the cameras automatically. So this is very convenient, right? This is much easier than manually going panel, perspective, shot 1, panel, perspective, shot 2. That's really tedious, and it doesn't give you a nice real-time transition. Versus this, you just drag across the border of the shots and you get to see how the cutting is going to work. I want to explain what all these numbers are, what they mean, and how you can manipulate clips. So you'll see that there are 2 sets of numbers for each shot, right? So a number at the top, a number at the bottom. So the number at the top, you see when I move my cursor, it changes to this little sort of X-Acto knife, right? Like for cutting. So if I go in here and drag this, what happens is I'm changing the length of this shot. So remember how I said we're making a guess here with this shot? And if I wanted to, I could go here and I could, when I'm done, let's say I don't need 150 frames. Let's say I'm done at 120. Well, I could just roll this back to 120, right? So I'm just changing the length of the shot. That's all, right? So the top level, all that does is change the start and end frame of the shot. And I can bring it back. And what you'll notice is when you use the top box, this 100% never changes. So the top numbers are basically the start and end time of the shot, and you can change it. So as you go through your edit, if you wanted to change it and the director said, yeah, let's cut a little sooner, it's flexible. You can definitely do that. Now the bottom numbers do something different. You can see the icon is different from the top to the bottom. This will scale the shot. So what will happen is if I drag this back, you'll notice the percentage changes from 100%. Now I've got what, like 81%? So what it will do is it will take 57 frames and play them back in 46. So it's basically scaling. It's playing more frames in less time. So this will speed up your animation. It will make the shot a little shorter. And this can be, again, it's not something you would be able to render. It would cause artifacts because you're not really affecting the animation. It's just a bit of a hack, right? It's just scaling the clip. So, but it's a very quick way to just test an idea. What if that shot was faster, right? Let's give it a try. So this makes it very flexible to change and try things without going in the graph editor, without changing your animation. It's just scaling the shot. Let's make the shot faster. The animation itself would be fine. It's the original source animation. It would still be keyed at frame 1 and 57, right? So if you had keys on 1 and 57, they would stay there. So that's what's nice about this. It's non-linear and it's non-destructive. Right, so the original animation is still completely fine. You're just playing it back at a faster speed. So if you see a clip that is not 100%, it means that it's being scaled. So that's the red flag. You just want to make sure, is that what you want? Okay. So the other thing that you can do with the camera sequencer, of course, is you can be non-linear. So if I take this clip and I drag it here, what will happen is you'll see that it now has jumped up to another level. So what happens now, if I want, I could adjust this, it would now reverse the shots. So the first thing it would play would be, you know, this shot, and then it would go over here, and I could reverse which shot gets played first. Let me just scroll over here. Where's frame 1? There. So now what happened is it would play shot 2 first, and then shot 1. So again, it's not changing any of the animation at all. It would just play it in different parts. So this gives you a little bit of like Premiere's tools in Maya. So you can basically be an editor, switch to different cameras. You can try different ideas. You can cut back and forth, right? So I could go in here and I could make a copy of this clip. And I could take this one and say, well, what if I took this one and I shortened it way down? And you'll see that what will happen is we'll be in camera 2, pop over to camera 1, and then we'll pop back to camera 2 here. So whatever layer is on top will be visible, just like Photoshop, right? So over here, where there's nothing over this layer, now, of course, it means that it's going to show just the bottom layer. And as soon as I get here, it will show the top layer, not the bottom one. So it gives you a lot of opportunities to try different edits. So what you might do is maybe you have a shot where, let's say you're animating a fight sequence, and maybe you started with cameras that are showing the whole body, head to toe, and then somebody throws a punch. And you might say, oh, I wonder how that would feel if I did a medium shot. So you would create a new camera to cover that action in a medium shot. And you say, oh, what if I did a close-up? So you can try all these different ideas, set up the cameras, and then switch back and forth between, you know, the wide shot, medium shots, close-ups, reaction shots. It's very, very easy to set up, and it's real time. So it doesn't cost you a lot. You're just switching cameras. So it's a good tool for previs. And if you use the timeline at the bottom, it will not cut between cameras. It will stay in whatever camera. So if I'm here and I move manually to shot 2, right, it will show me shot 2 for the entire length of the animation from frame 1 all the way to 150. But as soon as I touch the timeline here, it will switch the camera. Now, sometimes that's annoying because maybe you want it to be in camera 2, but you accidentally just touch the camera sequencer. It will override the viewport, right? So no matter what you manually set it, like, no, I want to be in shot 1, but if I tap over here, it will override, right? The camera sequencer overrides your view, okay? And it allows you to switch from one camera to the next. Now, the other thing that I need to cover is how do you export? Because the camera sequencer is a little bit tricky to do export, and it causes a lot of trouble. So don't be surprised if you run into some of the things that I'm going to demonstrate. What you can always do is, if you don't want to use the camera sequencer to export, you can playblast manually. So using the camera sequencer, I want you to know how to use the tool. That's the goal. But you don't have to use it for this assignment. It's just this assignment is designed so that I can show you that it exists and how to use it and that it's helpful. But when you export playblasts, you do have to be a bit more careful. So if I didn't want to use the camera sequencer to export and I just wanted to playblast manually, then I just have to restrict how many frames, right? So I would have to go here and say, okay, frame 1 to 57. And then I would right click on here, go to playblast, get all my options, make sure, it's, oh, I do, there we go. And H.264, there, all that good stuff. Make sure it's 1280 by 720 and crank that up. And then give it a name. I have to make sure that I save it and call it, shot 1. Pick where I'm going to save it. But this is what you'd have to do manually, right? So I would do this, hit export, playblast. And then if I wanted to do shot 2, then I would have to roll this all the way to the other side and say, okay, now I'm going to start with frame 58 and then go all the way to frame 150 or 155, whatever I have here. And then you would get 2 separate files, shot 1 and shot 2. That's completely, totally fine for this assignment. If you want to use the camera sequencer, then things get a little bit more complicated. Not impossible, but you just have to make sure you pick the right options. The red flag for anything with Playblast, it's the thing that I'm always checking. Whenever I look at assignments, the first thing I do is I go look for 1280 by 720. I want to know the dimensions of the file. And if you look at the options, what you'll notice, oh, here, the first option, Playblast selected shots, it gave an error message because I don't have anything selected. So if I went here and held down Shift and selected both of them, if I go to Playblast selected shots, what you'll notice in the options is there's no way you can tell it what dimensions you want. So that's a red flag. If you can't type in 1280 by 720, it's the wrong option. So I don't want to use this one. This is, nope, not going to work. Not that one. If I go here, Playblast all shots, go to the options. Does anyone see a 1280 by 720?
Nope. Nope.
Nope. Okay, so not that one. Go down the list one more. Playblast sequence. Do we see a box where we can type in width and height?
Yep.
Yep.
There we go. So let's just make sure that's got to be H.264, quality there. And I just need to make sure I type in 1280 by 720. So the option that we want to use is Playblast sequence. All right. Does that make sense so far? Okay. Let me just go through the last one. Playblast, replay blast selected shots. Again, same problem, right? And look at this, right? It's starting at frame 1. It's only going to go to frame 10. And there's nothing here that lets us change the size. Now, one of the problems is, of course, sometimes you just accidentally click on this and you don't click on this, and then something happens. So I'm going to show you what happens in the options that's really not very good. By default, and again, don't ask me why. I don't know why this is the default. What will happen if you pick the wrong option is that a couple of those options will build an image plane. They'll make that image plane opaque, and then they will put it on top of the camera. So what's happening is it will take a picture of frame 1, and then it will attach it to the camera. So what your camera sees is basically a piece of paper glued to its lens. So this will cause a lot of frustration because what you see is your scene, just like normal. but you won't be able to select anything, or at least it'll look that way. Because what's happened is it has built an image plane and glued it to your camera, so you can't actually see your scene. And this is the most common thing that happens, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you what happens, how to fix it, if it happens, okay? So if I leave these options just as they are, and I'll just go change this to H.264, and I'll just hit play blast. Let's see, oh, no shot selected. Let's go back. Close. Oh, it is going, good. There we go. Okay. Now let's see if I'm right. Let's see if this worked. Okay, so, okay. So, do you notice that I can't select anything? If I go to my perspective view, right, I'll be able to select stuff. No problem. But if I go to camera 1, right, I can select stuff. But if I go to camera 2, right, you notice how it's not highlighting. You see how this is highlighted even though I'm not selecting it? This is an image plane. This is not the camera's view. And there's nothing in the outliner that will tell you that what you're looking at is an image plane. So from your point of view, it looks just like your scene. So this is a really frustrating problem to have to diagnose and solve. So what you have to do is you have to go and dig a little bit deeper in some of these editors here. So you go to General Editors, Hypergraph, Connections. So the Hypergraph Connections, what this will do is it will show you all of the things that connect into whatever you'd selected. So I selected shot 2. So you can see here it shows scale, translate, right? All of those things that are over here, right? There they are, right? And they all connect to this thing, which is the camera, right? And up over here, you can see this thing here, image plane, image plane. I want to delete all the stuff that relates to this that has anything to do with an image plane. And now I can go back to my camera and you can see that now I can actually see and have it update because I deleted that image plane. It's no longer here. Okay. I'm gonna do the same thing with shot 1. I'm gonna go check shot 1 and make sure it's okay. So if you click on this button, look at connections, click on that button, and again, I can see there is an image plane node. So I'm going to go here and hit the delete button. Good. No more image planes, right, visible. If I go and check shot 1, make sure I'm in shot 1, I can select. Good. I can see things updating. So if I wanted to grab a camera, I can see that that gets highlighted. Good. I know that I've killed the image plane. All right. So it's just a very common mistake when using the camera sequencer. And I think this dashed line that's now shown up is when you have an image plane attached and then it's deleted, I think it shows as like a little dotted line here. Okay, just something visual. It's very annoying, but it's just there. It still behaves the same. I'm still switching between the 2 cameras. And now I no longer have to worry about an image plane. So please be very careful of these options. Any of these options that has build image plane, right, especially an opaque one, that's something you want to completely run away from and make sure you hit close.